Hi, everybody. I'm Dave,
And I'm John.
and this is Coffee and Capes, our podcast about two of our favorite things, drinking coffee and talking about geek culture.
That's true. That's very true. By the way, it's our 1 year anniversary of doing the podcast.
1 year. How about that, everybody?
That's
And
pretty
this
epic.
is episode 46 or 47.
Yes. We clearly missed there's a few in there over the year span that we missed because of stuff going on, but we've
Right,
been
but that's
doing it
pretty darn
pretty
good.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're at a B plus maybe.
Hey, don't sell us short. Like,
A minus.
perfect attendance does not necessarily equate to A grades.
All right, fair enough.
Or it's not required. It's probably probably helps, but it's not required for A grades.
Just remember, kids, C's get degrees.
What do you call the person who finishes last in med school?
A doctor.
Doctor, exactly.
That's right. All right, moving on.
But yeah, a year, that's amazing.
That's pretty rad. Yeah.
Thanks for being with us, friends. And if you've missed any of those 40-some episodes, I'm sure you cannot wait to go back and listen to them.
True. They're available on all of your podcast listening channels. I'm almost caught up on the YouTube. So if you want to watch us on YouTube, or if you are watching us on YouTube,
hi.
We are on Spotify, we're on iTunes, we are on Google Podcast, Stitcher, all of your favorite podcast listening places.
And so, probably on some of your lesser favorite ones.
Yeah, and some of your lesser favorite ones that you probably have never heard of and you don't go to. However, right,
guys, because we're everywhere.
Well,
not quite everywhere.
Yeah,
we're in a lot of places.
We're in a lot of places. Do us a favor though, like go back, listen to some of the podcasts. Give us a review. We like 5-star reviews. We really appreciate the 5-star reviews. We have some 5-star reviews on iTunes. Yeah, we got 5 of them. That's the only 5 reviews we've had on iTunes, but hey, 5 stars, we'll take it.
Pretty good.
Yeah, so drop us a review, no matter where it is, give us a nice review. We appreciate it. And then you can find us on all kinds of stuff, right? All the social media channels. Facebook is Coffee, the letter N and the word Capes. Instagram and Twitter. That was almost a very wrong word. Instagram and Twitter, we're at coffee _ the letter N _ the word Capes. We are on the interwebs on our website, coffee, the letter N, the word capes.com. Or if that's too much to remember, just go into the URL and type comics.coffee and you will find us. And then drop us a line, right? You can send us an email. We do respond to emails. So supers, SUPERS @coffeeandcapes.com.
Very nice. Yes, we appreciate all the ways that you connect with us. Thank you very much. And we definitely have had more than 5 people listening. Even though we've only got 5 reviews, there's way more than 5 people listening.
Yeah. 100. But yeah, we've had way more than that. But yeah. So if you are an avid listener, you listen to us all the time, it really does make a difference. Like, shoot us some reviews.
And I know it's annoying because every podcast you listen to says that all the time, but we do appreciate it. It does help with the algorithms, and we all know the stupid algorithms rule the world right now.
Yeah. So let's fight the algorithm that's keeping us down and give us some reviews.
Fight the algorithm. Fight the power.
Yeah, there you go. Also, when you're dropping reviews, if you are a customer, you do buy coffee from us, you buy comics from us. Drop us a review on the website, right? Let us know what you think of the coffee. Hopefully you liked it. Hopefully you're enjoying it.
Excellent. We appreciate all the ways that you support us.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, speaking of coffee, John, what coffee are we talking about today?
So glad you asked, Dave. Today, we're talking about a favorite, right, that we talk about often, but we're talking about it in a little different format. It's our Ragin' Cajun. Right, this is an epic French roast, by the way, single origin. I can't talk today. Small batch artisan dark roast, perfectly pulled, supremely smooth. But if you'll notice, it's in a box. And
Why
the
is it in a box,
means-
John?
Well, let me tell you, Dave. It's in a box because they're K-Cups, right? Single serving K-Cups. We do have some coffees. We're going to add a few more to the lineup of single serving K-Cups. So if you are one of those people that uses a Keurig, we do have a couple coffees available like this now. Again, we are going to add some more. So keep your eyes out. But yeah, Raging Cajun, and I believe America's Roast is in a K-Cup as well.
And Trinity as well. All three of those are available. So we have a light roast, a
Trinity.
medium roast, and a dark roast, all available in
Right.
the K-Cups. And I believe Power Dampener are
I don't
no,
know if
maybe
Power
not. I don't know.
Dampener is.
No, don't quote me on
No.
that. I know for sure America's Roast and Trinity and Raging Cajun are.
Right.
Yay. Excellent. Well, oh, and also don't forget just a little bonus coffee for you today that we have a limited edition Merv pumpkin spice. Because we
That
know
is.
it's the time of year when all you people that love your pumpkin spice, love your pumpkin spice.
They do. That it's super true. Like they really love their pumpkin spice.
Which is fine. Love what you love, man. It's all good.
Yeah, sincerely. Like definitely love what you love. And you do you. Like it's your life. You shouldn't really like apologize for the things that you like unless they're, you know, things you
Unless
shouldn't.
they're like fascism or
Yeah, there you go.
hateful or something. Like if you like those things, keep that to yourself.
Yeah. Moving on.
Yeah, moving on. Do we have any fan fiction today, John?
You know, we do. We're going to talk about a little bit about episode 44. That was Dave's interview with Ruben Nahara, and the best Archie comic ever. So this actually comes from Ruben, and you know, he responded to our post on Instagram, and he just said, "Great time on the show. Thanks for having me on." Little trophy emojis and thank you emojis. Ruben, and like sincerely, I'm really bummed I wasn't able to be on it. It was a great interview. You were fantastic and really a amazing talent. So thanks for making the time for us. And guys, if you haven't listened to that and you've always wanted a little bit of insight into how comics are made and what the artist process is, I can't recommend it enough.
Right. And I had somebody tell me recently that they just recently started listening to our podcast, and like they said they saw that episode but kind of skipped over it because I'm not really I wasn't familiar with Ruben. And I gotta say, like, you don't need to be familiar with his work to enjoy that episode. Like we talk about a whole lot of things, and he's super interesting and has some wise words to say and some very kind words to say and some challenging words to say. I think anybody could get a lot out of that interview with Ruben.
Yeah, I agree. And he's just a great guy. Yeah, like, honestly, he's just a great guy. Like I'd love to have him on again at some point and be able to be part of the conversation because I have so many follow-up questions.
Right. Well, he said he was willing to do that. He's got some other stuff in the works, and when that gets a little further along, my impression is, well, he flat out said he'd come back for part 2 sometime. So,
yep. Speaking
that
of
would be great. Yeah. So thank you, Ruben.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks, Ruben. Speaking of other guests on podcasts, I want to give a shout out to Scott at the Batman Universe podcast. We recently had the pleasure of being guests on Scott's podcast, and he said it'll be out in a few weeks, I think. Yeah, a couple of weeks. But what a great time that was. And Scott is a really nice guy. Like, so cool what 100%. They're doing over there. Like, go check out the Batman Universe.
It really is a universe of podcasts. There's a lot over there.
Yeah, there's a lot over there. And, you know, he just, again, super nice guy. And it was really cool to be on that podcast. And we're going to be on the Genre Geeks podcast with all those guys over there who are going to be at Dallas Fan Fest, by the way, in October with some cards from us to hand out. That if you're at Dallas Fan Fest and you get one of those cards, make sure you scan the QR code on it because we are going to have some giveaway stuff on there that you can enter to win when you scan the QR code, and some very special like discounts and deals just for the folks that attend Dallas Fan Fest. And we're going to do more of that stuff. So start
pretty
looking
cool.
out for, start keeping an eye out for Coffee and Cape stuff out there. And I'm looking forward to being on Genre Geeks to discuss She-Hulk, actually.
Yeah, for sure. Excellent. Well, if you are looking at our screens, you can tell what we're talking about. Today, we are finally getting to our reactions to the Disney Plus show, Ms. Marvel.
Yes, we are.
I have a feeling this might be one of those rare times where we have divergent views on things.
It is entirely possible. Entirely possible. But let us begin.
And so it begins.
So Dave, why don't you start?
So I gotta say, just in general, I really liked this show. I thought it was extraordinarily well done and a lot of fun. And for the most part, like I really liked the vibe of the show. I liked the colorful look of the show. I thought they really nailed the, this is a teenage character, and I think they nailed that vibe very well. I think it also had some uneven moments, and I chose as my screenshot there the one of the pieces that kind of bothered me, and I know it bothered you. So it certainly wasn't perfect, but nothing is. But well, I'm sure something is. But this show wasn't perfect, but overall, I really, really liked it. But you know what? Let's just get to the elephant in the room and say that a couple weeks ago when we did our reaction to the first episode of She-Hulk, the thing that really turned us off was the way she got her powers.
Right.
And I think that's going to be a theme of the critique part of our reaction today.
Yeah, I don't want to start out on a down note. So okay. Let's start out with first. I thought the casting was perfect.
Oh, insanely good. Yes.
Yeah, and I can't remember how to pronounce her name, and I feel terrible because
I've got it in front of me. I'm going to go. I don't know for sure if this is correct, but Iman Vellani.
Yeah. I think that's right. I'm trying to remember. First of all, her as an individual, I don't know if you've seen any interviews with her. It's so fun to watch her in interviews as she gets to meet other actors from the Marvel universe, because she literally just fanboys out.
That's so great.
And that I think is wonderful, because I think it brings this like the appropriate, in my mind, right, enthusiasm and energy and appreciation for this universe.
And that's a piece of the character. Like that's the character of Kamala Khan, right? Who fanboys out about meeting Captain Marvel and some of the other heroes.
Right,
like,
exactly.
That's a really cool synergy between actor and character.
Yes. And let's talk about Kamala Khan as a character, right? Kamala Khan as a character came on and a little bit controversial for some folks, because they weren't, let's just talk about it as it is. Like, some people have prejudice towards folks from the Middle East.
Yep.
Right.
For sure.
And so this was, but in classic Marvel and in comic book fashion, like we talk about the inclusivity, the equality, all of that, which is so important to us within the pages of comics. Marvel didn't give a F, right?
Right.
And and
said we're doing this, and yeah,
and man, what a great character. And her evolution in the comic books has been magnificent. Like the way she's utilized her powers, the way she took charge and led the champions and built that team. I mean, there's just so much to love about Kamala Khan and her enthusiasm and like how she still, well, she started out fanboying out about all of the characters, right? All of the other heroes. And then like some reality kind of sets in, and that fanboyishness kind of goes away.
Yeah,
Um,
sure. Which, is a neat part of the evolution of her character.
yeah.
I think the other cool thing about just the character itself is the way that the comics, and for sure the show, have given us a window into
Mhm.
Muslim Pakistani immigrant culture in the
Yeah.
US.
Yep. I agree. I agree.
And
Right.
I have zero, expertise in any of those things, but the people that have been part of the show and part of the writing of the books and the writing of the show are from that culture, and everything I've read says they really get it right, which is so important, and I think that's really cool.
Yep.
And I
Which
like
is
how,
wonderful.
for instance, they'll weave in words from, gosh, I'm going to get the name of the language wrong, but the native language from them. They get the words for like the terms of endearment that
Mhm.
the parents call Kamala and that Kamala calls the parents.
Yes.
Like they just weave them in, and they're not like pausing to like have a, to have a translation available. You're just picking it up
Mhm.
as you hear it. I think
Yeah.
that's amazing and great.
Yeah. And the casting for the entire show honestly was wonderful. I thought they did a great job finding individuals who really embodied, the characters that they took on. Um, and so from that standpoint, and I'll agree with you, right? So we've talked about this in the past, I believe. This show was geared towards teens because it is a teen.
Right.
It was really Marvel and Disney. Like prior to this, let's be really honest, like everything was aimed at, you had little bits interwoven in for like younger audiences, but the vast majority of it was targeting like comic book fandom that's
Yeah,
been
us
around,
middle-aged fanboys.
right? Us
Yeah,
middle-aged fanboys. And
yeah,
and thank you for doing that, Marvel. Please don't ever stop. Like, you know, but like there needs to be a push towards capturing the attention and the enthusiasm of that younger teen and preteen and
yeah,
tween crowd, so that comic books and the culture of comic books can continue to thrive and grow and expand. And you can't always do that with characters that are still targeting middle-aged people.
yeah.
um so this, it had its moments where it felt Nickelodeon-ish in the level of brightness and kind of over the top aspects of it. um but that's okay, because it needed to have that to capture the attention of like the age group that I think that this was geared towards.
Well, and it seemed to me that the first two episodes really emphasized the, Kamala drawing in her notebook
Mhm.
and kind of doing the animation over top of the storyline, and I suspect that's some of what you were reacting to, and kind of what you're referring to with the Nickelodeon
Mhm. Yeah.
thing, that like it was it was kind of an interesting, if maybe even if it's not your thing, weird amalgamation of live action and almost animation there on top of it. But then that almost went completely away after
Yeah,
like
I
the
don't
second
remember a
episode.
whole lot of it by the
Yeah.
time the show was done.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about that was they petitioned to have that done in an effort to kind of follow in the footsteps of Into the Spider-Verse with Miles
Okay.
Morales, the animated. That's kind of where that came from, and they all loved it so much and thought it was so great that they wanted to kind of do something that was a bit of an homage to that. So they
Which is
petitioned to
cool
have
because
it.
we know, sorry,
No, no, go ahead.
I was going to say, just that's cool because we know from the comics that eventually there's a pretty strong connection between Kamala
Huge,
and Miles Morales.
huge connection between the
Yeah.
two of them,
Yeah.
right? That's a huge connection between Miles and Kamala. Um,
And maybe that's a
yes,
kind of a subtle way of setting that up, or beginning to set that up, or like just make those connections a
sure.
little bit.
Yeah, I think so, right? I think that's definitely possible. and that, that went away as the show kind of went on.
Yeah.
I will also say that as the show went on, that like, so I wasn't immediately drawn into this show. I wasn't, because for no other reason. Well, there's one big reason for me, but if you just take that part out, the reason I wasn't immediately drawn into it was because it wasn't geared towards, like, not me as a white male or what have you, but me as an older adult, right? Like like we just talked about, you could tell it was geared towards a younger audience, so it fed to that flavor. It was clearly evident that it was feeding to that flavor, and while I appreciated it and thought it had, like, nailed so many things, it's hard for me to get into something that's geared for a much younger audience. um but as time went on, I found that I was drawn into it more and more. By the last two episodes, I loved the last two episodes. I
Yeah.
thought the last two episodes were so well written and so well done and shot beautiful. Like, the whole thing was shot well and well acted.
It looked gorgeous the whole time. Yeah.
Yeah, but the tone of the last two episodes, right? Like,
Sure.
Rachel, for those of you that are listening for the first time, Rachel is my partner in life and amazing, beautiful, better half. Like, she'll watch those things like Sabrina the Teenage Witch, the new one, right? The new one.
Yeah.
On and those kinds of shows that have the same flavor I thought this had through the first bit. And I just can't get into those. There's just something about it that I can't get into. And so that was the issue I had with this through the first, 4 episodes. I think it was 6, right? Total.
6 total. Yeah.
Yeah. And then in the last 2 episodes, I was pretty into it. I wanted to see what was going to happen.
Yeah. I guess that vibe just never really turned me off in that way that it did you. I've never, there's not much that I watch on like the CW or whatever it's called these days, but
right.
But it never quite had that feel to me. I mean, I was aware of it, obviously, and it was interesting. So I've got a 16-year-old, and he watched it with us, and he definitely liked it. So I think it kind of did its job there to bring in the, that at least the teenage viewer in our household.
Right.
I was not able to get our daughter to watch it. I don't know. Not that like she actively said I don't want to. She just never really
wasn't a big interest.
So I'd be interested to see what her reaction would be to it. But one of the things that I guess that frustrated me. Let's talk about her powers, because that's the big thing. If you're not watching on YouTube, John's name today is a little pissy. What is it? A little pissy over changed powers.
Yeah, that's the name I chose for the Zoom.
Yeah. So my beef with it, and here's why I have this picture. Like, a lot of the time, her powers just seemed she seemed like Iceman. Both in the look and the use of her powers, with like the creating, Iceman's known for creating like slides and bridges and stuff.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and she doesn't quite do that. She did like stepping stones or something, but it just it looked too much like Iceman for me. Like, I didn't really enjoy that part as much.
So let's talk about it. Let's get into this for a second. I'm okay with a number of things being changed, right? Yeah. In bringing characters to the screen. I thought Jason Momoa was a great Aquaman, like, and his heritage and background as an Asian Pacific Islander, I thought, was great. There are people who are very upset because Arthur Curry has blonde hair and, blue eyes and what have you. And I understand like that, right? Like, I've had that moment too. With Ezra Miller in The Flash, like there's too much deviation from, The Flash in the comics and Ezra Miller for me. And mostly how the character is brought to the screen. Like, right, he seems like he's got ADHD and he needs Adderall, and like we've talked
Yeah,
about.
we talked about that.
So my issue here is that changing a power set like so dramatically, there's so much that developed within her power set within the comics, and I was really excited to see that come to the screen, because she's similar to like Reed Richards in that she has the ability to expand and everything else, but she expanded hers, like she gets massive, like she can expand her size and grow, right, to be taller than like buildings in the comics.
Right.
That's a whole thing. Like that's a big part of her power set. And what we got was, to your point, like something that seemed like they changed it to specifically appeal to kids, right? If you
Okay.
look at it, it's like crystal and
Yeah.
shiny and
Yeah.
all this other stuff. And I'm sorry, but that felt like you're pandering way too much, right? There was no need to do that. Her power set wasn't offensive. She uses it in a different way than Mr. Fantastic. Like Reed Richards, yes, his stretching powers and everything are pretty great. And if you've read the Ultimate Comics, the Ultimate Marvel comics, when he becomes the Maker, like he explains there's a point his body no longer like processes food or anything, like he just like it's just what's happened to his body as a result of being able to expand and everything else. But really Reed's biggest asset to the Marvel universe has always been his brain.
Right.
So the powers are great, but at the end of the day, he's not the most physically powerful guy out there, but he's definitely like the smartest, almost to a fault.
Yes.
So Kamala Khan's powers in the comics really demonstrated like what that could look like, right? When somebody has a little bit more, I don't know, just
size and her mass can't change probably, but she somehow she embiggens herself and her fists, that's and that's her little catchphrase, like embiggen, and she makes her fist real big and she punches somebody, or like in that first episode, she stretches out her hand and catches, like makes her hand big and catches somebody.
Yeah. But to your point, right, it was very Iceman-esque in the way that they brought it to the screen, like the jumping onto the little crystal things.
Yeah.
Right. All I heard in my head over and over was the theme song from that cartoon in the 80s, Gem. Every time that my sister watched, and I had to sit through because it was on before G.I. Joe. And I just like every time I was like, what are you doing?
See, now I think we've gotten to the root of the problem here. Is that you got PTSD from Gem, too much Gem watching. I don't even remember it. The advantage of not having a younger sister, I guess.
Yeah, but it's one of those things, like it was an wholly and completely unnecessary change.
Yeah, because the from an effects standpoint, you could just as easily have made that her actual fist and arm growing and expanding, as making it a crystal extension of her arm and fist. I would think
100%.
Yeah.
So why, right? Yeah. Like why? What is the point? I didn't understand. Like it didn't make any sense to me. And they jacked up her origin of where she gets her powers.
Yeah, that was a whole interesting choice. So if spoiler alert here, I guess, I forgot all about our usual spoiler warning. I mean, the show's been out for weeks and weeks and weeks, but
Yeah.
yeah, we're gonna spoil everything. So uh in the comics, I believe I have this right. In the comics, there's a whole Terrigen Mist thing from some
From the
Inhuman deal
Inhumans,
that,
it was
like,
an
from the
Inhuman
Inhumans,
bomb.
right? And so anybody that has latent Inhuman DNA goes into like the sort of cocoon thing that, which we saw some of in the in Marvel's Agents of Shield TV show, where there's a little bit of that. They'd go into this sort of crystallized sort of cocoon kind of thing, and then they would come out and have powers.
Yeah,
Isn't
and
that correct?
that's a big, like, that's a big thing,
Yeah.
because it was the end of what was that run? The Infinity Run, right? Which is one of my favorite storylines, like, around. But the end of that, Black Bolt and his brother, right? Uh Maximus, right?
Maximus. Yeah.
Maximus,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, Black Bolt created a Terrigen bomb to release Terrigen Mist into the atmosphere of Earth to awaken the latent inhuman powers that existed. We learned all about Inhumans and where they came from and everything else, and that it was a big deal.
Yeah.
And that's where Kamala Khan gets her powers from. It was an amazing opportunity in Miss because let's be real, the Inhumans TV show,
Was not good.
it was bad.
Yeah.
It was bad. It was poorly executed on just
Every level.
it was rushed into production, like it felt rushed, and there were some amazing people in that show, amazing actors that really were done a disservice because of how rushed that was to come to screen. So Marvel had an opportunity to introduce an entirely new group into this new universe, the new cinematic universe, right? They could have literally used Miss Marvel as a way to bring Inhumans into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and they shit the bed.
Although it's interesting the way you put that, like they could have used this to introduce a new, I forget what word you use, group of characters or groups of species, a new group into the universe. And turns out that is what they did, just not with the Inhumans.
But not with the Inhumans. And they'd already kind of, I don't know, this felt like there are so many pieces about this that felt like Marvel pandering to like specific groups instead of like just kind of going with their flow of making, like, there's subtle changes that happen in bringing anything to the screen, right? But they stay pretty true to a lot of like origin source material. And we knew they were going to bring the mutants in at some point. We knew X-Men were coming. Like, we knew that was going to happen. It's been made clear, but this wasn't the show to do it, in my opinion, because she isn't a mutant.
Right. Well, she is now in the MCU, in some manner. It is
Yeah.
It is a weird confluence of, like, they're kind of pretending that the Inhumans don't exist, except that they brought it into Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness.
Yeah, they brought it in. That's right. Yeah.
So somewhere, at least in some universes, the Inhumans exist, and they used Anson Mount, as we talked about when we reacted to that movie. They used Anson Mount to play Black Bolt, which is the guy that played Black Bolt in the terrible TV show. So they've kind of sort of acknowledged it, but then with this, instead of really bringing it in, they kind of disavowed it and went a whole different direction. Now, let me push back a little bit. So here's an example of why, and this might just be because sometimes it bothers us and sometimes it doesn't. But for instance, we could say that everything you just said about Marvel having a chance to bring in a set of characters, but didn't, and because they changed the origin story, couldn't you say that same thing about, say, Wanda and Pietro, who were
Yes,
supposed to be
and
mutants now, but did that bother us? Did we have that same
yes,
sort of
it
reaction?
bothered me. Yeah,
Okay.
100%. That bothered me. That like, I remember that specifically, and I remember holding conversations with people after that about how much that bothered me in the Age of Ultron, when we get introduced to Wanda and we get introduced to Pietro, and I
Instead of
I
being
thought
mutants, they're just
they're
experiments or something.
right, they're just genetic experiments.
Yeah.
And now, mind you, I believe in WandaVision, they tried to retcon this a little bit. That there was like latent mutant power, which was why the experiment worked on Wanda and Pietro. And that's so, and this brings up probably one of my biggest beefs that can happen from time to time with the MCU. And I look past it because I'm all in. Like, I get to see characters from my childhood and from the comics that I read now brought to life.
Sure.
But you don't have to go back and try and like retcon something if you just do it right the fucking first time.
Right. They just didn't have the corporate wherewithal to do that. That was the whole problem at the time, right? They didn't have access to the mutants because they sold away their rights to their own damn characters.
Right. They sold away the
Decades
rights
ago.
to the Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, X-Men, like, and we all know why, because
Yeah.
back then, like, comic books were flagging and they were running out of money, and it
Right.
made
Marvel
sense.
was almost
And now look at
full.
what's happened, right?
Now they rule the world.
Yeah, they're an entertainment, juggernaut. Like, you've got Marvel Avengers Campus at Disneyland, you got Marvel everywhere, and good for them, because man, I'm having a blast.
For sure.
And this is nitpicky, right? And I admit it. I admit that I am being nitpicky with the show and with the power set and with the changing of how, of where she gets her powers from and everything else. I acknowledge that 1,000%, but it's mine.
Right. Yeah. I think that's an important self-realization to make, to say, like, yeah, I get it. I'm being nitpicky, but it's just bothered me. Like, it's both. Let's be honest, but also honest with ourselves. So I think that's good and important.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of the thing that we said way back in episode 1, that we come at this stuff as, borrowing a term from writer John Warner, as enthusiasts. Like, we're people that we want this. We're obviously not professional critics. We want these products, these shows, these movies to be good.
Yeah.
We want them to succeed.
Yeah. Yeah, we really do.
And so part of that is we hold them to a high standard.
Yes. And part of that standard is an unfair standard, because as fans, right, we sometimes bring expectations to things.
Right.
And if there's anything like my father has taught me over the years, is he's like, there's no faster way to be disappointed than to have an expectation.
Yeah.
And it's true. It's
Right.
completely true, right? We look at, I think about like art in comics. Like, if I see an amazing cover that somebody's drawn on a comic book, and then I flip it open and the art is lackluster, like, I had an expectation looking at the cover that is not met when I see the interior. Or I see a specific writer's name on something, like, and I think, oh man, they're going to do brilliant with this series, and then you read it and it's lackluster, and that's just an expectation. And when we raise expectations to a certain level, we are absolutely setting ourselves up for disappointment.
Yeah. Well, or I think about Thor: Love and Thunder. Like, on its own, movie's okay. Compared to my expectations, it really fell short.
Yeah, I mean, it made $755 million. I mean, let's
Yeah,
talk about
well,
Morbius.
that's 25% less than it should have if it had been really, really good.
Let's talk about Morbius.
Let's not.
My
Apparently
expectations
people
on
are
that.
like, apparently people are watching the bejeebies out of it on Netflix or whatever it's on now.
It's the most popular movie on Netflix right now. I just read that.
Yeah. Like what?
Also, oddly enough, when I go back and look at like what podcasts we've done that have been the most listened to, Morbius shot up to the #1 spot. People
Oh
are
my God.
watching it and going back and listening to that podcast.
Wow. Okay.
So,
You do
but
you,
I
friends.
but I think so. This brings up a really good point because expectations can go the other way. You can have really low expectations that sets the bar so low that you go into something, you're like, okay, that was actually fun.
Yeah.
And I think that might be what's happening with
That could be.
Morbius because
Yeah.
people have trashed that movie, like trashed it, and it made horrible money, made like $100 and something million. Like, I don't even know if it broke even, but it hits Netflix and all these people who refused to pay to go see it, right? Because they're like, oh, it's getting terrible reviews. It's
Yeah.
going to be garbage. They're like, okay, I'm going to sit down and watch it. And they sit down and watch it. And they're like, well, it wasn't that bad. It was okay.
Yeah.
Right. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
that's exactly what's happening.
That's probably
there.
true. That's probably true.
Yeah.
Let's get back to Ms. Marvel.
All right.
So those are kind of our main critiques, but I want to bring back to there was just so much to like about this show. I think we've talked about a lot of it. That every casting decision seemed really, really good.
Mhm.
The development of the character, like I really like that the relationship between Kamala and her parents felt like a real teenager
Mhm.
parent relationship.
Yeah.
But also we didn't get stuck forever in the, oh, I've got to hide my secret identity thing. Like it's we all know
Yeah,
that's
that was nice. I liked that.
Yeah,
I like
that's
that. 'Cause
one of
in
my
the comics,
biggest pet peeves about comic book stories is the hiding of the of your secret identity from your family, from those people that are the closest to you, that are gonna find out, and like
right.
the
Yeah.
convoluted ways that sometimes gets done. So I was glad to be rid of that and to have mom and dad supportive, figure out a
Mhm.
way to be supportive.
Yeah.
Like they had to
And
go on a journey there too. Like, and
Yeah.
that's how, as a parent of teenagers, I kind of think that's how I would feel, like super scared for them, but also super proud of the good she's doing.
right. I
And
would
eventually come
ask
around to
for a ride everywhere. Just carry me.
yeah, right. Yeah.
I
Well,
and that, you know, that's one of the things I liked that it pulled from the comics, because in the comics her community knows who she is and they support and surround her and protect her and go to her. Like, she is known within her community
yeah.
as having those powers, and I was glad that, to your point, that they didn't do the, you know, oh look, she has this little mask on and it's totally impossible to know who she is.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
The entire family's like, we knew.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't think I don't recognize my own daughter?
Right. Right. Yeah, that was great. But to your point, like the community supports her too, right? Remember,
Mhm.
there's that scene in one of the mid episodes where they're fighting at the high school, I think, and whoever the weird government
Creepy
agency,
lady. Yeah.
yeah, are gonna come and try to take her, and the community's there, like supporting her and kind of willing to fight the agents to protect the kids, to protect
Yeah.
Kamala and the other
Which
teenagers.
was nice to see.
It was great. Yeah, I really
Yeah.
like that part. Oh, also, so remember a couple years back with the TV show Watchmen on HBO,
Yeah.
and how it started with, and in a lot of ways revolved around the actual real world event in 1919, the bombing and destroying of Greenwood, of Black Wall Street in Tulsa.
Yeah.
And that show for a lot of people was an introduction to that historical event,
Right. Yeah.
because so many of our history books and our teaching have glossed over that or just ignored it and pretended it didn't happen. and that show brought a lot of awareness to that event. I think in a similar way, Ms. Marvel did that for Partition in India, because I got to say
Mhm.
that was not a thing that I knew about.
Yeah, no, that was pretty amazing that they brought that in and gave us that history lesson for those of us
Yeah,
that didn't know about that.
right,
Um, and there's a lot of history there. I mean, you go back and look at like the British attempts of colonization around India and Pakistan, and all of that we again tend to gloss over, right? Because we don't like the idea of showing the world like the ugly underbelly of what we're capable of doing,
yeah,
whether it's European or American, um and even now we're seeing people fight to keep that stuff out of children's hands to allow them to learn.
right.
Folks, I'm just going to throw this out there, and then I'll climb down off of this soapbox. But you do understand that allowing people to see the mistakes that we made in the past helps them to learn and not repeat those mistakes for the future. Like,
Right. But see, there's the rub. I think a lot of the people that want to keep those stories away don't think those were mistakes and want to repeat them.
probably,
We're
right?
seeing
Like
that.
the internment camps that we put, we all
Right.
talk about the internment camps during World War II where the Germans, kept the Jewish community. We had internment camps in the US
Yep.
for the Japanese community, right?
Yep.
And we need to acknowledge and look at those things and learn and get better and treat each other better. But to your point, yeah, Dave, there's probably unfortunately a segment of the population that doesn't think those things were wrong. And
Well, they're
you
at
know
least that's how they're acting. They're acting like those things weren't wrong because they're still trying to disenfranchise black voters and all the
yeah
on down the line. So
yeah
so thank you, Ms. Marvel, for bringing to light a piece of world history that affects us still today.
mhm,
Like,
yeah
some of the reactions I've read from Pakistani and Muslim community to this show, or yeah, partition is still it still affects us. Like that was everybody, something like I read something like this. Everybody I know has family. Everybody I know, their family has a partition story.
mm, mm, yeah
So it's important for those of us that somehow missed that part of world history, myself included. I'm glad to know it.
yeah that's great. So Dave, what's your overall take on the show?
Overall, I guess, as I said, I kind of let the genie out of the bag there in the beginning. I thought it was terrific. I really enjoyed it. I loved the way they brought in art from the comic in the like the credit scenes at the end. Like I thought that was really cool. I liked a lot. They went out of their way to um bring to life some of the iconic scenes, like Ms. Marvel sitting on the street light
Yeah, for
post.
sure.
Um,
Excuse me.
the thing with the brother, like the relationship with the brother. Actually, I think the relationship with Kamala's relationship with her brother was even better and more explored in the show than I remember in the books that I
Mm,
so far.
yeah.
Um, so I liked all of that. I think it was uh each character was embodied very well. I loved it. I've got to give it a solid, strong. I enjoyed it. Overwhelmed or Coffee and Capes reaction to Ms. Marvel. Overwhelmed. I really really liked it. Highly recommend it.
Yeah. I so I agree with you on a number of points. I thought the character portrayals were really well done. The choice of actors was on point, right? Man, I love seeing all of the relationships that existed within the comics brought to the screen in a
Hmm.
way that really I thought did the comics justice. So I enjoyed that part tremendously. Again, while I wasn't a huge fan of like the art direction and everything else within the show, because I felt like the story kind of tilted more towards teens,
Yeah.
I still thought it was well done,
Yeah.
right? It just didn't draw me in until like the last two episodes, and then I was like, oh, I gotta watch it now, right? This was probably the first Marvel show where I let like a couple days pass after it got released on Disney Plus before I sat down and watched it, because I wasn't as into it, right? It
Yeah.
wasn't as big of an attraction for me. And I was and still am very bitter about her power set and
Sure.
the change they made to her from being an inhuman to a mutant. So
Yeah. But
I
come on,
have
that one moment though, that one moment where they announce that she's got a mutation and they play the little do 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 in the
I was
background was
angry.
that was really great. I thought that
I
was
wasn't I was not happy. I was like, really? This is what you've done? Like you took an important character and you made like these changes. I was bitter. And I'm still bitter.
fair enough.
And that's okay.
Sorry, I
So
interrupted you. You were about to give us your
yeah, that's okay. That's okay. So I will say that from what should be the most important side, which is the character casting and the storytelling and everything else, right? I was I was overwhelmed. I thought they did a marvelous job. Huh? Get it? Marvelous job.
I see what you did
Um,
there.
yeah. I was whelmed in the way that it was brought to the screen as it was geared towards teens for the vast majority of the episodes, and that's fine, and I think that's great.
Mhm.
But for me as a watcher, I was kind of whelmed by that, and
Yeah.
I was hideously underwhelmed by her power set change and the shift
Yeah.
to making her a mutant.
Yeah.
So for me, right, I land in the middle. I
Sure.
was whelmed.
Yeah.
Right. I'm interested enough to see what they do with the character moving forward because we're getting Ironheart. This
Yep.
possibly sets up champions. Eventually, we know Miles is coming into the universe.
Right.
So
Well, and we
there's a
got the
lot
movie,
with this.
the Marvels. I think it's
The
called
Marvels coming.
Marvels.
I'm really excited to see what they do there. I think that could be a ton of fun. I'm really interested to see if they take that movie and use it as the vehicle to start Kamala on the path of forming the champions.
Yeah.
Where she starts to become disenchanted with because what
The
really drove her to
adults.
become right
Yeah.
disenchanted with the adults. So I'm really curious to see what they do with it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. But yeah, I'm whelmed, but I'm willing to I want to see where they take the character because I do love the character.
Yeah.
Right. And the culture that it brings to the comics. And, I love seeing that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
that's where I land on it.
It strikes me that we didn't even really talk about villains or bad guys in it. And I think that's probably partly because that was one of the most underwhelming parts for me. Like I don't even know those, like the whatever that was supposed to be with the Jinn or the
Yeah, I don't know what
department
that
of
was.
blah blah blah. Like I don't know, who are they? Why do we care? I don't know. Like
Yeah,
that part
it was.
didn't really grab me. But
I had no care about those characters, to be
yeah.
honest. I was more interested to see her evolution and
Yep.
the impact that her having powers on her family brought to
Right.
to everything like that. And to honestly to get really into seeing that piece and not care about the villains can be a good and a bad, right? Because on
Sure.
the good side, like you really were caring about the individual, like the character and the relationships, and that was really well done. And on the negative side, like you obviously have a big miss on the development of your villains and creating a compelling um
Foil for this
yeah,
character. Yeah.
yep, agreed.
Well, and maybe part of that is that is there really? I mean, there's no that I can think of obvious big bad from Ms. Marvel yet.
Yeah, no, but
At least not
we'll
that I
get
know
one.
of. Yeah, it
Yeah,
could be I
I'm
missed
sure
it
we'll get
somewhere.
one though.
But yeah, right. So yeah, I think it's a lot of fun. I'm with you. I can't wait to see what they do with the character next. So many possibilities. It's gonna be great. Some of the stills or the videos we've seen from whatever it was called, D23, like the thing that just happened where DC Marvel or Disney Marvel
Right,
revealed
yeah.
some of the released some of the new trailers and whatnot. Just seeing those actors on stage with each other, like the
Yeah, it's pretty
three the three actors, Monica Rambeau that play Monica Rambeau and Kamala Khan and Carol Danvers together. Like there's obvious chemistry there. Like it's gonna. I have high expectations for that movie. we'll see, I guess. But
I don't have high expectations for it. I'm just trying to go in with the idea of like, I think it'll be entertaining,
that's smart.
right?
Yeah.
And not putting the expectation level on it, because when I put an expectation level that's really high on something, I pick it apart, and I don't want to pick it apart, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Sweet.
all right, my
Well,
friend.
there you go, friends. True believers. That was our take on Ms. Marvel. What did you think? What we get right? What did we miss? What did you think of Ms. Marvel? Let us know. Reach out to us
And
in
leave
all
us
the
a
ways.
review.
Yeah. Leave us a
Please.
review, and many, many stars if you're up for that. We'd appreciate it.
Yeah, you can leave like 10 stars.
Awesome. And hey, once again, happy anniversary. Yay, 1 year for
Happy
Coffee and
anniversary.
Capes.
Yeah.
How about that? Who knew? I did. I knew we'd get through. No, this has been great, and it's always a lot of fun. And I don't care if only 5 people listen. We're gonna keep doing it because we have a good
Kevin
time.
Costner listens. I don't know if he's one of the 5 people.
Narrator voice. There's no proof that Kevin Costner listens.
There's no proof that Kevin Costner listens to this. It's just my dream.
Yeah. You dream on, little buddy. You dream on.
I will.
All right, everybody. Until next time. Thanks and